Right, so in today's video I'm going to look at percentage increases and decreases. Now I'm going to do this in a very specific way. If you'll notice underneath I've written here using multiplying factors. Now you can increase and decrease with percentages by basically without using a calculator, by working out the percent and then adding it on. But what I'm going to do with you today is I'm going to do it in a more efficient way, which is using a multiplying factor, and you will need a calculator as well. So once you've got what the calculation is, it's just a case of typing it in and you get your answer straight away. So it's really efficient, and it has a useful, this technique is really useful for other percentages that you can calculate later on, which are much more complex. So, very useful technique, and this is how it works. So I've got two examples. I've got one increase and one decrease. So the first one here is the increase. Now normally when you get this question at GCSE, it'll be wrapped up in a little story. Something costs £580 and for whatever reason it's being increased by 12%. Okay, but I've just kept it nice and simple. Let's just have the question and just focus on that so that we're just looking at the maths and forget about everything else. And really, when you get your wordy question, that's what you need to do. It's about pulling out the maths from the question and kind of leave the rest of it, and then just make sure you come back to that part at the end. So we're going to increase here. The amount is £584, and the most important part is what percentage you're increasing by. So in this particular instance, we're increasing by 12%. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to find our multiplying factor. Now, because I don't have a lot of space, I'm going to call that MF to keep it nice and short and sweet. Okay? Now, in order to find our multiplying factor, first we need to know if it's an increase or a decrease. And as I said here, we're increasing. Our original amount, and this is key with any percentage that you're calculating, your original amount is 100%. So we start with 100%. Now that is, in this case, £584, but that's irrelevant right now. We start with 100%. We're increasing by 12%. Now if we increase something, it means we add it, okay? So we're adding on 12%, all right? Now when you get used to this, you won't need to write this down, but I'm just writing it down now so that you can see the process. Now if we add those two things together, it's 100% plus 12%, we obviously get 112%, okay? Now, the clever thing about this is now going to be exactly like a percentage question, which is what you learned before increases and decreases, where you're just finding a percentage of an amount. So what we want to do now is we want to find 112% of £584. Now the key here is all we've got to do is basically turn that into a sum. Now 112%, well, we know percent means out of 100. That's no good in that form. We need to change it to a number, which is a decimal. So 112%, if it's out of 100, 112 over 100, or 112 divided by 100, if you like, is 1.12, okay? Of, we times, and then we have our amount, £584. And that is the calculation. Now this here is our multiplying factor. Okay? So this process here is how we find the multiplying factor. We always start with the original amount. It's an increase, so we're adding the percent we want to increase by. We get that number, and then we turn it into a decimal rather than a percentage by just dividing by 100. So that is now our calculation. So then we get our trusty calculator and we type in 1.12 times 584, and that is equal to, now don't forget this is money, this question is about money, and with our money system we have pounds and pence, so that's always 2 decimal places. So if you get an answer which is more than 2 decimal places, you must put 2 decimal places and do your rounding. If it's less than that, make sure you do your 2 decimal places, or you can leave it as a whole number of pounds if there are no decimal points, obviously. This one, the answer it gives us is actually to 2 decimal places anyway, so it's £613.76, and that's exactly what we get. So that's the process. It's nice and simple, no complications there, and you can do that for any increase or decrease question. Now obviously if it's on a non-calculator paper it's a little bit more tricky, but in a non-calculator paper the numbers will be easier, and you will be able to do the increase and decrease in a different way. Okay, so you'll be able to find the percentage of the amounts using your non-calculator methods and then add it on, or if it's a decrease, take it off. So this is more if you've got a calculator to hand, because it's much more straightforward. So the next question then, we're going to do a decrease, and we're decreasing £1,024 by 32%. So we start off very much in the same way. Our original amount is always going to be 100%. Okay, so whatever in the question is the original amount, that's 100%. And just remember that, because sometimes questions are worded in a slightly different way. Sometimes you might have to find that percentage, okay? But in this case, we're told to decrease this by 32%. So that is our original amount, it's 100%. We're going to decrease, now if you decrease something, you're taking away by 32%. Okay? So all you do is 100 take away 32, and that gives us 68%. So now what we're going to do, just like here, is we're just going to find 68% of 1,024. Okay? So we just now need to change that into the sum. So we need to change 68% into a decimal. So 68%, percent means out of 100, so 68 over 100 is 0.68 of times and the 1,024, which was our original amount. And then we go to our calculator and we type that in. 0.68 multiplied by 1024, and we get, and again this is already to 2 decimal places so it's okay, and we get £696.32, and that is your final answer. Now you can always look at your questions and look at your answers and see whether you think they make sense. 32%, it's not half, it's a way off of half, so you'd expect to have more than half left, and we do here. You can see that quite clearly. Half of 1,000 is 500, so we're, I know it's 1,024, but we're just estimating. This question here, 12% is close to 10%. Okay, 10%, that's close to 600. 10% of 600 would be 60. So if you look at that number, then you can see that we're kind of roughly in the right place. So that is how you do percentage increases and decreases using a multiplying factor. And once again, this number here is our multiplying factor, and this number here is our multiplying factor. Once you've got that, it actually makes the process very simple, and it certainly helps with more difficult questions that you could come across later on.